Hey there everyone, this is AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of over 700 videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, character classes and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below or backing me on Patreon where you can get access to all of the scripts I write for my videos. Members of either also become members of the secretive Gluminati on my Discord server, and of course, subscribe to me here as I upload at least twice a week and have a live stream every weekend. Today, somewhat different video, a vlog style video where I'm talking about making encounters, because I've talked about this a few times in various videos, but I thought I would just sort of give you a resource that you could turn to when you're in your planning stage. You put your DM hat on and you sit down and you really start thinking, okay, what do I want in this session? What do I want in this campaign? What sort of things do I want to cover? This is the video to listen to inspire you and get your brain thinking in the right directions. So first of all, things to consider. There's a lot of questions. What are the player characters and where are the player characters and why are they there? Does this involve the characters' background stories? And also, does it involve their character class as part of their background? So we're thinking the history of the player character, their skills, their culture that they come from, their relationships that they've formed before the game's even started, the training that they've received, who trained them, relationships with family members and members of the City Watch or the town or the Thieves Guild or caravan traders that they've worked for before, the reputation that they have in that area, in the town or in the areas that they're moving into. Have they had past dealings in this place? And the skills that they are known to have, so the reputation for being able to do things that other people can't do. So you'll want to design the sort of background and the encounters from the top down. So think about the region that the characters are in. If it's a civilized region, it's probably got nobles who have land and ownership and business interests that they don't necessarily want disrupted by player characters. They'll have functionaries that work for them, and probably the player characters will be dealing with the functionaries on behalf of the nobles, so the nobles will be pulling the strings and well aware of what's going on in the background. And of course, the functionaries will have what I call goons. These are people without much authority of their own, but they take whatever authority they can get and they make the most of it. So these are the petty functionaries, the bureaucrats, the gate guards who are overly officious at their job, people who are looking for bribes and things to get ahead. Of course, in wilderness environments and things, you're dealing with shamans and chieftains and things like that for local groups. Also, don't forget that the tribes and things that live in a particular area will have dealings with each other and politics of their own, much like cities do. Environment plus flora and fauna plus the NPCs plus the event plus the character goals plus group objective. That is the structure of thinking that I bring to any sort of encounter. What's the environment that the characters are in? Are they in a dungeon? Is it a dry dungeon? Is it a wet dungeon? Is it an infested dungeon? Is it a relatively sparse and sterile environment? What sort of flora and fauna lives there in these different conditions? There could be undead, so it could be a very sterile environment, but undead are wandering around because they don't need to eat or drink. There could be signs of a definite ecology. It could be one which is just sort of blown in from outside of the dungeon, which means that there may be additional entrances or exits. If they've broken into a sealed tomb, for instance, and it's full of all sorts of ecology mammals and things, they've probably come in there somehow. The NPCs that they encounter in these places could be rival factions who are going after the same goals. They could be factions with completely cross purposes. They don't have any idea why the player characters are there and they're quite surprised to find them, very suspicious of why they're there. Don't forget you're building conflicts and relationships. Not only do the player characters have to gel together and have a reason for being there, but the NPCs also have a reason for being there of their own. They're not just random stat blocks that you encounter as obstacles along the way. Some of them can be allies, some of them can double cross. Some of them can seek to use the player characters for their own purposes. The event is what is triggered and what sets off and becomes an encounter. So when the player characters get involved in any sort of scene, they are setting things off. And I always like to think of them as the trigger that sets the ball in motion. Nothing really happens, or things sort of sit at a near boiling point, and then when the player characters get involved, it boils over and becomes a major event. This is the reason why everything seems to happen around the player characters because they're the pivotal point. They're the point of focus of the story. You don't want exciting things happening off camera. You want them happening on camera with the player characters involved. That's the whole point. And I always say that you should think of the most exciting thing, the most fantastic thing, the best outcome, the most sort of visually dynamic, evocative sort of scene that you can think of, and that would be the thing that you build the adventure around. The encounters should be set piece, amazing examples of what a dungeon can bring, what a wizard's lair, what a golem construction factory, all these sort of things, incursions of demons or angels or whatever. It should be amazing stuff that these player characters are getting to see, and by and large the non-player characters just sort of tag along at the outsides and get involved to help or hinder, but the player characters are really driving the action. So everything revolves around the characters' goals. Why are they there? What do they personally, individually want? What are the objectives of their player character's background and their current motivations? And what is the group objective? What are they actually there for to achieve? So individual characteristic goals could be different from the group goals and group objectives, which can cause conflicts as well. And they can certainly be at odds with the environment, the flora and fauna, the non-player characters, and the event in question. So setting up those conflicts and resolving it through interaction, roleplay, and combat. What is an encounter? An encounter is an experience. That's why we give them experience points. So what would be the most cool experience? What is the most iconic experience? What is the most fantastic experience? What is the most fun experience? What provides the most growth, provides the most reputation, provides the most resources, provides the most direction, and provides the most additional objectives for the players? That's what you're looking at. Does the encounter actually involve any sort of growth? Or does it detract or enhance their reputation? Does it take away more resources than it gives them? Does it give them direction, or does it confuse them, or does it misdirect them into something that causes more time and more pressure? And is the objective straightforward, or does it become complicated by this encounter? You'll notice that I haven't actually mentioned monsters yet. Monsters are just a part of the flora and fauna of your encounter. The encounters are any sort of scene where the characters are interacting with the world and you're not narrating what happens. When they start narrating what happens, then it's an encounter pretty much. NPCs are not as complex as player characters. So these are the red shirts, the away team and the one-trick ponies, the home base people, the agents, the rivals. So let the players decide who are the most important and involved NPCs just by the way that they react to the personality that you're presenting. You may not be a dungeon master who likes to put on a funny voice or really roleplay the individual foibles of those characters, but non-player characters are often, they boil down to, well, I like to highlight three particular things about that character. So my go-to example is it's an ex-watch captain who's retired due to an injury that gives him a ferocious limp. He's got a massive moustache and he smokes a huge ceramic pipe. So that pretty much paints all that you need to know of the physical appearance of that character. The imagination of the players are going to fill in the rest. They're also going to provide that guy with a voice in their heads that they hear when you're talking. So you don't necessarily need to put on that roleplay the entire character as best you can. They're really going to fill in all the gaps that you leave out. Just give them something to riff off and their imagination will take over the rest. Now the red shirts are characters that basically are there to go in and get killed and form the example of how dangerous the situation is. This is used in the Star Trek adventures absolutely perfectly, which is, hey, Rogers and Samson, you go in there, or just they don't even have names. They've just got one name. They go in there and they get killed. And then it's like, what killed Rogers and Samson? How did they die? And that becomes an example, a clue for what the threat or the monster or the trap is. The away team and the one tricks are the non-player characters that come with you who are really only good at one particular thing. And then after that, they're largely expendable, or they're just sort of dead weight, or they're just interesting personalities that are along for the ride who are good at particular things, so they're worthwhile keeping around. But really, as the Dungeon Master, your job is to threaten them occasionally, and for the players to assess, I'm a hero and I want to look after this person, and they're not as good at surviving as my character is. So, but they've got useful skills, so I want to look after them. The home base is these are the Q type characters. These are the ones who equip and give information and basically provide for the player characters when they come back from their adventures. So they're the home base guys that will take care of their needs and look after their business interests and invest their money and things like that in the background. They may also pass on interesting quest information, requests from nobles for an audience. They may give them leads to new adventures. They may even be set to research particular things for the player characters so that they can provide information for them that furthers the quest or gives different directions if the characters are stalled for any particular reason. And then you've got the rivals. These are the guys in town who essentially don't like the rising reputation, don't like the skill sets of these characters, and put themselves up in a rival position for it. Don't forget that characters who aren't necessarily good enough to beat the characters one-on-one can still beat them in the court of public opinion. They can frame them for crimes they didn't commit. They can send them false rumours that send them off in a wild goose chase. They can put them in a situation where they're at odds or they've insulted somebody that they probably shouldn't have. Don't forget that no matter how powerful the characters are, nobles and things like that can summon the town guard and the local militia and stuff who outnumber those player characters considerably, and in 5th edition, numbers really matter quite a lot. So if you like this sort of inspirational thought process vlog type thing, let me know and what other sort of subjects you want me to talk about. I'm now going to slip into monsters and monster ecology. One of the things that I like to do is I combine the background and the information with when the player characters are in town and things like that, like the home base guys researched information for them, and then slip into that some rumors about monsters. Monsters are not animals. They're spectacular because they're legendary. They're out of the ordinary. People don't know what their capabilities are. They become legendary. They become scary stories or anecdotes that people have. So part of the scary stories and anecdotes is about 50% of what people will be saying about them may not necessarily be true, or may be true but they've got the wrong idea about that particular monster. So if you take, for instance, a rust monster, the locals may actually think that it dissolves everything, not just metal. They may think that it actually degrades leather and flesh, that somehow breathes acid or something like that. So they may have the wrong idea and give quite a different impression to the players when they're going into an adventure or an encounter scene, that this thing that they're encountering is not just a simple rust monster. They may think that it's something much more dangerous and have over-prepared for this. So that's something to consider. And also, the locals may avoid an area and actually prevent or try and prevent the player characters going in there because they don't want this legendary beast disturbed. Things that they don't know about, they will form superstitions about. So they will have all sorts of rituals and things like that for appeasing this monster, or they may have particular balms and things like that snake oil salesmen swear will ward off this particular type of creature. They may have weapons that are surefire defenses against it, and they may be very convincing and present quite convincing anecdotes as to the effectiveness of this stuff that doesn't actually work. Or, as the Dungeon Master, you have it in your power to make sure that this does actually work. Hey, what do you know? Pure silver does actually burn rust monsters. Who knows? Maybe slag iron is toxic to them, like, bad alcohol, and it gets them drunk. Who knows? Think about these things. Think about ways that you can spin in stuff, and definitely always listen to the players at the table. Give them the chance to talk amongst themselves, and give them the chance to have those conversations amongst themselves where they're worried about what you're going to present next, and they will present worst case scenarios. I don't recommend that you take their worst case scenarios and make them real every time, because they will quickly learn to say nothing around you that you could possibly interpret as, them steering the game in the worst possible direction, but definitely take their thoughts and concerns and fears and riff off those. Maybe don't deliver exactly what they said, but something adjacent to it, or skirt perilously close to it, seeming like that's what's going to happen, to just heighten their awareness of the danger of a situation. Risk and reward, danger and heroics, these sort of things. But don't seek to psychologically torture the people at the table, or really, if there's something that they're uncomfortable about, you don't need to provoke those sort of things. If someone's got a phobia of spiders or something like that, you don't need to send giant spiders against them because you know that they're scared of these things. They're not sitting at the table to be tortured by you. They're sitting there to be entertained, and there's all sorts of different ways of doing that. So that's why the session 0 is so important, to establish those boundaries, guidelines, things that people are uncomfortable with or comfortable with. You'll know if you're playing with a group of people for a long period of time, you've known them before, you've got a well-established friendship, that you can have pretty robust games with a lot of different elements in there because you trust each other. If you're in a situation where you're going to a game shop or something like that, or you're gaming online and you don't know the people involved, then you don't know what they're okay with or not. So it's very important to have that open communication before you start the game. And I would recommend, if you're playing at a convention or something like that where you don't have a good few hours in an evening to sit down and really hash this sort of stuff out, don't involve any sort of elements that could potentially cause people any sort of distress like that, certainly. Go with things that are in movies and things like that are okay. Just go off, TV shows and things like that. Involves those sort of elements, and let the players sort of lead you along as well. Be flexible and be able to put off certain encounters and drop them in later on. Be a bit more flexible in where things are going to take place. Think about the pacing of the game. Gauge your players' energy levels at the table. If they need a break, give them a break. There's no problem with taking a 10-minute break to go and refresh a drink, or sit back and relax, or check your messages on your phone or anything like that. So yeah, definitely frequently check in with the players. Just observe what they're doing. When they're leaning forward and they're really engaged and conversational, give them a chance to talk amongst themselves. When they're in a good mood and they're joking, let their characters have a moment of peace and quiet where they can talk in character and really just enjoy being those characters in that setting. And when they're sort of stalling a little bit, that's when you drop in a combat encounter or a dangerous threat or a new trap or something like that. Be prepared to be mobile and flexible in your gaming, and you'll all have an excellent time. It's really not that hard. The players will do a lot of the work for you. They will have their character sheets with them. They'll have their players' handbooks and stuff on either in a book form or on their phones or online, and they'll be able to look up rules and things like that in between their games turns. And yeah, keep the pace going along. So you really, the more you can sort of settle back and just sort of tell the story, the better off you will be and everybody will be. So yeah, that's my take on designing encounters. I'll probably be able to talk about more of terrain effects, what sort of environments that the adventures take place in. If you want more sort of log style videos like this one, let me know. And what sort of thing that you enjoy me talking about, what sort of aspects you think I bring to the skill set of being a dungeon master that you think is a strength that I should delve further into, or things that I should avoid. Just let me know down in the comment section below, and have an excellent day.
I was knocked down, heard the countdown through the haze, in the face of defeat, yeah. I was ruled out with no bailout, on my own, all alone, left to bleed out. But I rose up from the ground, just like I was spellbound. All the odds were against me, so I picked up the pace, and now I'm in the race. Give me some space. I'm a movement and I ain't losing. To so I've been told that I should fold and give in. I can't win in this game, no. But you can hear me laughing. I'm the new thing in this field. You should kneel instead of me now. Yeah, I rose up from the dead. Your words inside my head. All the odds were against me. But now I'll lead ahead with grace. I'm winning this race. Give me some space. I'm a movement and I ain't losing. Gonna go, 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 go. Like a bullet, don't take no bullshit. You should know, no, no, no. I'm about to explode. I ain't asking for permission, no. I don't have to say I'm sorry. I ain't staying in the background, no. 'Cause I don't need your worry. I'm a movement and I ain't losing. Gonna go, 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 go. Like a bullet, won't take no bullshit. You should know, no, no, no. I'm about to explode.